In this episode, we're going to explore the phrase, my CPA said it's fine, and why tax compliance is not the same as legal protection. Welcome to the Pro Sapreneur Network. One of the most common phrases business owners say is this: my CPA said it's fine. And most of the time, they're telling the truth. But fine for taxes and safe legally is not the same thing. Today, we're going to talk about what CPAs actually do, what they don't do, and why mixing those roles create a false sense of security. Let's talk about what CPAs actually are responsible for. CPAs focus on taxes. Their job is to report income correctly, calculate taxes, and keep you compliant with the IRS. If your numbers add up and the filings are correct, the CPA has done its job. But taxes look backward. They report what already happened. So, why do business owners ask CPAs legal questions? Business owners ask CPAs legal questions because CPAs are readily accessible. They already have a relationship. They already know the numbers. Some people ask questions about structure, about protection, and risk, all in the same conversation. That doesn't mean that the CPA is responsible for legal outcomes. It means the questions were asked in the wrong lane. How do we have conversations with CPAs regarding tax compliance versus legal protection? Well, tax compliance answers one question: did you report the income correctly? Legal protection answers a different question: who is responsible when something goes wrong? A business can be perfectly compliant with taxes and still expose the owner personally. The IRS doesn't decide liability in court, so many business owners often ask the question, well, why did it pass tax review? Doesn't that mean it's safe? Passing a tax review doesn't mean that the structure was tested. Taxes don't review contracts. They don't review ownership behavior, and they don't review separation. Taxes simply review numbers, while courts, on the other hand, review conduct. So, how does good advice become misleading? The advice can become misleading when it's applied outside of its purpose. A CPA saying, this is fine, means the numbers work. It doesn't mean that liability has been tested or liability is sealed. Different problems require different expertise. So let's talk about how smart business owners use both lanes. Smart owners are going to separate advice just like they separate money. Tax professionals handle reporting. Legal structure handles risk. When both are aligned, businesses stand stronger. Alignment is not replacement. Your CPA didn't do anything wrong, but taxes were never meant to protect you. Most entrepreneurs believe probate is a family problem. They believe it affects heirs, but not operations. They believe the business is going to keep running while everything else gets sorted out. The belief is false. Probate is not about death. It's about interruption. And interruption is lethal to businesses that depend on authority, access, and decision-making. This episode explains why probate is one of the most misunderstood structural risks entrepreneurs face, and why most businesses do not survive it intact. Probate is not court taking things away. Probate is a court freezing decision-making until authority is established and clarified. That distinction matters because when an owner dies, nothing automatically transfers the operational authority. The court doesn't assume continuity. The court assumes to the contrary. It assumes uncertainty until someone proves who owns the interest, who has the authority to act, who can bind the business, everything is going to pause until that is clarified. And the pause is not symbolic. It affects bank access, contract enforcement, vendor payments, executive authority. Probate doesn't shut the business down intentionally. It simply removes the assumption that anyone has the right to act. And most businesses rely entirely on that assumption. You've heard it before. Entrepreneurs often say, the business makes money. It'll be fine. But revenue doesn't create authority, and revenue does not appoint decision makers, nor does revenue override probate. A business can be profitable and still be completely immobilized. If the owner was the sole signer, the sole decision maker, the sole authority, then death removes the only recognized control point. No one replaces that authority automatically. Until the court recognizes a successor, the business exists, but the business cannot act. And that's not a failure. That's the system doing exactly what the system is designed to do. Continuity is about authority, not intent. Entrepreneurs plan with intent, but courts operate on authority. Intent doesn't move money. Authority does. Intent doesn't bind contracts. Authority does. And if the authority is not pre-assigned and documented, then the continuity collapses, regardless of goodwill, family agreement, or the success of the business. Many entrepreneurs believe a will solves this problem, but it does not. A will distributes ownership. It doesn't create operational authority during probate, and in many cases, a will actually confirms the freeze by routing ownership through probate instead of around it. While probate runs, shares can't be transferred, authority can't be exercised, successors can't act independently. So the business is on hold. The business waits. Employees wait. Contracts wait. Clients wait. Vendors wait. And waiting is not neutral. Waiting destroys momentum in any business. Businesses survive probate only when the ownership is placed outside of the individual, when authority is pre-delegated and continuity is built into the structure. This is not about avoiding courts. It's not about avoiding courts. It's about removing the need to seek permission from the courts in order to operate. When the authority is already assigned, the business does not need probate to function. Ownership can transition, operations continue, and the distinction determines whether or not the business survives. Probate is not about death. In fact, it's about interruption. And interruption kills businesses that rely on individuals instead of systems. If continuity matters, authority must exist before it's needed. Remember this, continuity is about authority, not intent. And that is the difference between businesses that pause and businesses that disappear. If you're listening and realizing that this isn't about paperwork, it's about patterns, well, that's intentional. Behavior leaves patterns, and most people never see them until something breaks. If you already have a business operating, I built a business structure diagnostic that shows how your business behaves across separation, authority, drift, stress, and continuity. It doesn't tell you what to do, it shows you what's happening. It's linked below. Now, let's keep going. In this episode, we're going to talk about what courts freeze first and why access disappears before the decisions are even explained. When people imagine court problems, they imagine a final judgment. They picture a judge deciding winners and losers. But most damage happens long before that. Today, We're going to talk about what courts restrict first, why they do it, and how unprepared businesses get stuck before anyone rules on the merits. So let's explore, why do courts freeze assets before they decide? Well, courts exist to prevent harm while facts are being sorted out. They don't want assets moved, money spent, or decisions made that can't be undone. So instead of deciding immediately, they pause activity. Now, freezing is not punishment, it's caution. So let's talk about what gets frozen first. Courts are going to start with access. Who can touch the money? Who can sign? Who can act? Bank accounts are often restricted early because money moves fast. Authority gets questioned before liability is even decided. And the actions by the court, in many instances, leaves the business feeling paralyzed. Owners feel stuck because normal tools stop working. Cards decline, transactions pause, signatures get rejected, and institutions, the banks, they don't want to guess who has the authority because the unclear structure is what gave rise to all this hesitation, as well as the pause. So now, let's talk about how a bad structure makes freezes even worse. When the structure is unclear, the courts are going to lean toward restriction. If the roles are vague, the courts are going to tighten the control. If ownership and operations overlap, the restrictions are going to spread even wider. Ambiguity leads to broad freezes. So what does freezes do to operations? Well, freezes are going to affect daily activities. Bills won't get paid. Employees are going to get nervous. Contracts are going to stall. Reputation may even suffer before the fault is decided. But here's the thing, preparation changes everything. And preparation doesn't prevent the courts from acting, but it limits how far they need to go. Clear authority is going to reduce the need for broad freezes. Structure is going to narrow the impact of any court actions. Courts move slowly, but freezes, they happen fast. This episode, we're going to talk about what happens when partners die without agreements and why assumptions collapse the moment the law steps in. Most partners believe one thing very strongly. They believe that everyone understands the plan, but courts don't enforce understanding, they enforce documents. Today, we're going to talk about what actually happens when a business partner dies without clear agreements and why good intentions don't survive that moment. Let's talk about how partners think things will go. Most partners believe that things will be handled fairly. They assume family will respect the business. They assume the surviving partner will continue the operations, and they expect common sense to guide those decisions. But common sense is not a legal standard. Let's talk about what the court has to do when a partner dies without an agreement. When a partner dies, the ownership issues have to be addressed. The court's job is to protect the heirs, not the business. If ownership passes to someone unfamiliar with the business, the court still treats the person as the owner. Experience is not required for inheritance. So why does control sometimes get stuck? That's because control doesn't automatically stay with the surviving partner. If no agreement says otherwise, votes, decisions, and access can stall. No one wants to move without authority. That's how businesses freeze and how disagreements form. Most disputes aren't emotional at first. They just start with uncertainty. Heirs want value, survivors want continuity, but without clear rules, both sides feel justified. That's when the conflict grows. And that's why the state default rules in many instances surprises the parties. Because when the agreements are silent, the state law is going to step in. And state rules apply equally, not personally. They don't consider relationships or history. Default rules are designed for neutrality, not efficiency. So, how does the partnership agreement prevent all of this from happening? The agreements, they don't create distrust. They're going to create clarity. They say what happens before emotions are involved. Clear buyouts, voting rules, and authority paths that protect everyone. Planning prevents paralysis. Death doesn't create problems, silence does. In this episode, we're going to talk about exit clauses that people regret ignoring and why leaving a business is harder than entering one. Most people plan how to start a business, but very few plan how to leave them. Every business ends in one of a few ways. Someone leaves, someone sells, someone gets sick, or someone dies. Today, we're going to talk about exit clauses, why people avoid them, and how ignoring exits creates some of the most expensive problems businesses face. So why is the exit clause so uncomfortable? Well, one of the reasons surrounds the idea that the exit planning feels negative. People think it signals a lack of trust, or they think that it won't apply to them. Everyone expects things to stay stable, but change is not a failure. It's normal. So what's the exit clause supposed to do? An exit clause explains what happens when someone leaves, not who's at fault, just what happens next, how ownership is valued, who can buy it, and how long is the process going to take. It removes the guessing when the pressure is high. But here's what happens when there is no exit plan. When there's no plan, people generally freeze. No one wants to make the wrong move. Partners argue about value, operations stall, and the silence creates delay. And the delay, it creates damage. Why exits are usually not friendly? Why are exits usually not friendly? And most exits are not planned in calm moments. They come from conflict, urgency, or surprise, a health issue, a financial problem, personal disagreement. That's exactly when clarity matters most. And if it turns out to be a really bad exit, it can negatively affect the business. And bad exits just don't hurt partners. Bad exits don't just hurt partners, they affect employees, clients, reputation. People hesitate to work with unstable businesses. Unclear exits create visible instability. But good exit clauses are going to protect everyone. They're going to protect the relationships. They let people leave without destroying what was built. And clear rules make hard moments easier. Good exits are going to preserve the business value. Every business ends for someone. In the next episode, we're going to bring everything together and explain what own nothing, control everything actually means in legal terms. If you don't plan the exit, you don't control the ending. Thank you for joining the Prosapreneur Network. If this episode helped you see structure differently, here's how to go deeper. If you're before launch or early, there's a business structure assessment. It helps you determine whether your structure is ready before complexity sets in. If you're already operating, there's a business structure diagnostic. It examines how your business behaves under review. Not documents, but patterns. Both are designed to give clarity before you try to fix anything, because behavior leaves patterns. Links are below. Use the one that matches where you actually are.